most of the time. I have a couple of playtesters that I suck into doing work for me and bribe them with pizza and stuff. Let's see, what else? Please toss me a question or two. I hate talking about myself. Like, so not my favorite thing. Let's see. I do not, let me see. Nope. All right. Questions, please. Good questions, bad questions. I had corn chowder for dinner. That's not very exciting. Let's see what else. My first game that was on the market was cover to cover with Hasbro. It was a magazine scavenger hunt for girls. And, you know, frankly, it would be nice if someone told me that they could hear me. Ooh. No, I cannot see your questions. Not at all. I have a comment. I could say, hi. Oh, now they've all appeared. How wonderful. Oh, thank God. I was really boring talking about myself. All right. Hi, Pam. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Maxine. All right. Now I can see questions. Can I start summary of my background? All right. So I don't know if you were here at the beginning. Again, like I said, I started in this industry right out of college. I needed a job, and this toy and game invention firm was like, hey, you want to work for us? And I was like, sure, why not? And I had no idea this is what I wanted to do, and I started doing it, and I love it. So I've been doing that ever since. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know. I've been working on my own for the majority of my career. After I started with that invention firm, I was with them for a couple years, and then they went out of business, and that not all that exciting. But I had the choice to go and find something else to do, and when I started looking into that, I was like, man, a real job kind of stinks. And it's a lot more fun to do something that is something that you love, so I stuck with that. All right, let's see what else. How often do I play test my games? It all depends on the game. I do a lot of like really young children's games, and for that it's less repeated playtesting, simply because you just need to know that it works with children that age. They're pretty simple, they tend to be, at least. So for that, for other games, like more adult party games, I do play test that regular, but it really depends on games for me. I don't over play test anything, simply because I'm in the business of coming up with as many games as I can in the smallest amount of time that I can spend on them, because the majority of the stuff that I do, let's just put it this way, all the stuff I do pretty much is on spec. I do some other work that is not on spec, but for the most part, I'm just trying to get as many ideas in front of my clients as possible to make sure that I make some money. How do I assemble my group of playtesters? You know, I have a regular group of playtesters I use all the time, so if I need a special age or something, I'll go outside of that group, but they're usually friends and people that, you know, are in and out of my life. You always try to have that, like, one or two people who, like, I don't know, kind of hate you or something. Not hate you, but like want to like prove the game wrong. Sometimes they're really helpful, but you have to know who they are. How do I first start a game? From Nicole. You know, it's different for every game. Sometimes I come up with a name first, and sometimes I come up with like a look of a game, and then sometimes it's that I come up with like the feeling of a game first. Like I'll say, oh, I want something that's, you know, I don't know, like a revengey but co-op-y game. I don't know. And so it comes from different directions, and I'm constantly thinking. So I just kind of toss the ideas onto either a notebook or a little cup I have on my desk, and then I'll go back to them and think about them some more, and then work on the ones that I feel like I have more of a handle on, and others just get to mull for a while. Let's see, next question. You design games full-time. How is it difficult to do this full-time? You know, it is kind of difficult to do this full-time. So here's the crux of that. I am married, and my husband is a firefighter, and that brings a lot of stability to my life because we basically budget everything off of whatever he makes, and then everything I make is gravy. So, you know, going out to dinner, going on vacations, buying nicer clothes, you know, that type of thing comes out of the stuff that I make, but that gives me a lot of freedom that if I have a really terrible year, we will still have power and food. So for me, that's how I make this possible. At the same time, I have been profitable pretty much since day one, but I did a lot of development work at the beginning. And then once you get going, you have a lot of games that have been on the market for a while, so there's some steady income there, but you never really know. So let's see. Oh, so after an idea, a mechanic, a theme, then what? Well, then I usually put together a quick, like a very quick prototype, and I play against myself with, I don't have them right now, but I have little Japanese erasers that I use as other players, and I'll put that together and I'll play with that. If it's someone that requires someone else, then I will bring them in right away and do a quick play test. I also, if a name is important, I spend a lot of time researching if the name is available, because sometimes a game is really tied to the name and that's important. So I'll do a lot of research, make sure that nothing like it has been done before as well. And there are a lot of games that have been on the market, so that takes some time. Yes, I do most of my games as spec work. Do I ever come up with an idea and then shop it? Okay, let me back up. When I say spec work, I mean that I'm coming up with an idea and then I'm going to go and I'm going to pitch it to different game companies out there. And they sometimes come to me and might say, hey, we have this idea on our wish list. Can you work on it? And those are the best ones because you know that they at least have a hole in their like planogram, or they have the idea that they want, and that's less shooting in the dark. But the rest of the stuff that I do, and I pay for the prototype and I pay for the development and I don't get paid for my time, and then I hope that I'm going to go and find a company that wants it and that they're going to plop down a decent advance to cover all of the expenses I've had so far, and then that they are, you know, it's going to make money in the future so that I can continue to make games. Hopefully that answers that question. Do I pitch to publishers? How have I built up those relationships? How do I pitch to publishers? Yes, I pitch to publishers mostly through videos these days, although some one-sheets just to start. Even if I'm at conventions most of the time, I have relatively quick meetings and I don't schlep prototypes as much as I used to, but I feel like that's kind of overall changed within the industry, that it used to be that we were all schlepping prototypes, and I know there are still people who do schlep prototypes, and I still sometimes schlep prototypes or parts of prototypes, but for the most part I do videos and sell sheets on an iPad, and then if somebody is interested, then I will ship them the prototype to play. So it's a lot of stuff that goes into making one pitch, because you have to, you know, come up with the idea, test the idea, make that prototype, and then you have to make a video on top of that. So it's just like adding layers and layers to the amount of work and the amount of assets that go with one game concept. But frankly, there's so many people who want to see videos now that, at least on the mass side of the industry, that it's pretty much required. How have I built those relationships? I just spend a lot of time talking to those people, and I've known them all for almost 2 decades, so that's always kind of makes it easier. Have I ever considered self-publishing Kickstarter? Absolutely not. That's not my jam. I'll be honest. I love coming up with the ideas, and bless the people who can go and take an idea from start to finish and see it through and sell it to their consumers and whatnot. And I have found some great games on Kickstarter, but that's just not me. I don't want to do the artwork. I don't want to have to deal with manufacturing. I don't want to have to do with testing. I don't, you know, that's just not where my heart is. So I don't think I ever want to go that direction. Do I show them the video at the convention, or do I email it to them? Yes, if I'm at a convention, say New York Toy Fair, I will have a meeting and I will pitch pretty much everything off of video. So I'll play a video and talk through it or stop and start, or depends. A lot of times at conventions you can't hear real well, so you have to keep that in mind when you're creating videos. But at the same time, then when you send it to them, you're not there to talk along with it. So there have been times I've actually made 2 videos, one with like words and voice, and then others without, or I'll just be able to mute it so that I can talk through it when I'm at a convention. It's really, you got to think about all aspects of it. And then afterwards, most of the time they ask for it to be sent in, so then I will send it to them. Some companies have portals, some don't, and I use Dropbox, although there's plenty of other services you can use to send those videos over. So how much time do I spend making a video? That's an excellent question. As little time as possible, but it still has to look good. I have had many conversations with inventor relations folks who say basically they hate really bad videos. If the camera's shaky, or you know, like the quality is just like painful to watch, those are never good videos. So there has to be like a minimum quality to it. I've gotten it down to I can do a couple videos in a day. Like I did one in about 2 hours this evening. So that's kind of quick, but again, it all depends on how much you need in the video. Do you need any fancy video work or not? So, and then, you know, it's also schlepping out all the stuff. I do have fancy lighting that I used for the video, and so I have to pull out all my lights, and I have to pull out my tripod and, you know, shoot everything multiple times to make sure I have all the videos before I import it to my computer and do it that way. So that's a pain. But what has been my proudest moment so far as a game designer so far? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess I just love what I do, and I'm always looking forward. I'm never looking backwards. So it's great when something like one of my games called The Build-Up was Party Game of the Year in Finland last year, which is really cool. I mean, to go and win Party Game of the Year in a country that I've been in for all of maybe 24 hours, 48 hours most in my life is pretty awesome, and I call that a pretty big highlight. Having items with Hasbro has always been a highlight because that's like a really big deal. There are a lot of people fighting for those slots. But overall, you know, I love it when people send me emails and they're like, oh my gosh, I played your game with my grandkids or with my kids, and we loved it. We had like the best time with it. I have such happy memories of it. Like that to me is a really big deal too. So let's see. What are the things you look for or expect in a game for you to think it would be viable in mass market? That's a really great question, and I honestly cannot give you an answer for that one because there are definitely things that surprise me. Usually I would say like most of the games that are on the market have a big wow factor, but that's not entirely true. Some are really trendy, some are not. And then some are twists on the classic and some aren't. And the mass game market seems to be changing all the time now. It used to be a little bit more formulaic. You used to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do like a Sorry line extension, and then there's going to be a Monopoly line extension, and that type of thing. And now we're seeing all sorts of stuff, and it's great because it's amazing that there's such variety out there. At the same time, it also makes my job harder because you see people who want the big wow at a high and are willing to pay the higher cost, and then you want people that have like the really funny name and is a lower price point item, and it's all over the place. You never really know. Like the year that all the poop games came out surprised me. I just didn't expect to see that many games about feces. Let's see. Oh, did I reach the bottom of the questions? Or are there more? Let's see. Yes. Yes. There were so many poop games. I will never forget that Toy Fair year. It was like walking to someone's booth and you'd be like, where's your poop game? Do you have another poop game? Excellent. It was amazing. Oh man, I don't know. All right, so Maxine asks if I do my own artwork, and the answer is yes, sometimes. I I do my own artwork, but I also keep in mind that I can't spend too much time on it because they're just going to get rid of it and use someone else's artwork who's like a real illustrator. I also use some services out there to get some of the other stuff that I need, but I mean, I do all my own design work, so I might grab a character from like Free Pick or something and use it, but for the most part, I put together all of my artwork. Keep in mind that most publishers understand that it's not going to be the most gorgeous prototype on earth. Sometimes if you over pretty a prototype, there are some people who can't see past it. So let's say I did a game about a dog and it was like really well done. It had like a cute little dog house in it or something. And they'd just be like, yeah, we just, we've already done so many games about dogs. We're just not into doing dogs. And they can't like wipe away the dog theme and maybe see that it could be like a cat or a rabbit or a unicorn or platypus, whatever it is. So there's also a balance in doing the artwork. That you want to do it, but you don't want to do it too well. You want to make sure that they can still be like, yeah, this isn't great. We're going to wipe it away and kind of create our own visual with it and let them think. But again, that sort of comes from knowing who you're pitching to. There are definitely clients that I know are really good at seeing past the artwork and seeing past the theme to the gameplay itself and understanding that it could change from one thing to another. And there are other people who are very like focused on what you've presented them and don't want to necessarily look past that. Or maybe it's not that they don't want to, it's they just have a hard time looking past that, and you kind of have to know the difference, and that takes years of getting to know someone. Next question. What would I recommend to someone who wants to get started as a game designer? Honestly, play a lot of games. That would be a really great start. I have a lot of people who come to me and like, hey, I have this great idea. And then they pitch an item and I'm like, that has been done. So I think playing a lot of games and getting some feel for what's been done and what makes your ideas unique is really, really important. Beyond that, then I think I would probably say go to conventions. I live in Chicago, so I'm a huge fan of the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. There are a ton of mass market industry people and even specialty market industry people that are there, and it's a great way to meet them. Everyone seems super friendly, so getting your foot in the door, I think, is the hardest part once you start getting the ideas going. Do I have a process for generating creativity and new ideas? I have a couple different processes. I have lots of different like brainstorming techniques that I use on and off, depending on what kind of project I'm looking for, what kind of thing I'm doing. If I know that I have a client meeting coming up, I usually aim all of my thinking towards that particular client. But if I'm in a point where I have a lot of blue sky time, then I take on different focuses. I'll look more at like who I want to invent for. Like maybe I'll pick a person, and this is one of my favorite ones. I like pick a person I know, and I'll be like, if I could make like the best game for them, what would it be about? And come up with ideas that way. Weirdly, Rory's Story Cubes, that's a really great way to ideate. I like those a lot. And then I have, other little games that I play with myself to come up with ideas. But I think a big part of it is if you can spend time brainstorming when you're not under pressure, you tend to come up with better ideas. At least that's my personal opinion. Oh, hi, Peggy. For a new game designer going to their first con, such as Toy and Game, what is my advice on specific networking tactics? I don't know. Go out of your way. Be friendly. Say hi. Introduce yourself. I think, New York Toy Fair, everyone is really, really busy, and I think to be respectful of someone's time is also really important, and just to introduce yourself and then, like say, I'd love to follow up with you kind of thing. Is that okay? Because there are a lot of people there that are doing multiple different jobs at the same time. So if they are out in their booth, they might have meetings. And so it's really hard to like corner them and ask them a lot of questions at that point in time. But getting a chance to introduce yourself, whether it's there or at one of the parties surrounding New York Toy Fair or one of the other events, just getting a chance to swap cards and then following up later it's probably great. I know that at least for me, my meetings are scheduled back to back to back to back to back to back. And I'm like running from one place to another. Not that anyone's jumping up and down to meet me, but I know that a lot of the inventor relations people, like I said, are wearing multiple hats, and so they have a lot of meetings back to back to back, and they don't mean to be rude, but sometimes you end up in that predicament because they're running out of time, and all of us are kind of crazy. So that would be my advice there. Do I plan my pitch meetings ahead of time for conventions or meet more informally? Absolutely, positively plan ahead of time, and my schedule is done in advance, and like I said, have all my meetings back to back. I often schedule myself a bathroom break and then end up scheduling a meeting over it because I run out of time. I never have a lunch for the most part because I maximize my time, which makes me seem crazy, but it's kind of what you have to do. I every once in a while schedule downtime toward the end so that if something happens and you miss out on someone like plane flights, something happened, miscommunication, I can tack on time at the end, but you know, it's hard. Meeting informally doesn't usually work that well. I have in the past, and I have pitched games off of my iPhone in a bar. Happens. That's not that unusual. It's a little strange. But for the most part, all the companies I want to meet with, and I do pick out targets ahead of time, I will have meetings with. And then if I'm lucky to meet someone that I haven't met with or didn't have time to make a meeting with, but I came up with something for, I will reach out that way. What type of language should, what type of language should they use to describe themselves? I'm a new designer. Okay, so that goes back to the question about introducing yourself. Yes, you could say that you're a new designer, although there are people who are definitely uncomfortable about working with brand new designers. I think you'd probably say, like, I have experience working with this company, I'd love to work with you. Instead of saying I'm a new designer. Having your foot in the door at another place and having a game somewhere else definitely helps open doors in other places. Otherwise, there are a lot of people who think they're game designers, but back to what I said earlier, like they really haven't done any research and whatnot, and I'm assuming that the people I'm talking to here have done their research and played a lot of games and know that what they have is interesting and unique. So yeah, I would definitely say like, oh, I've worked on this project before, this is my game, I would love to talk to you more. That would probably be a great way to do that. If they have not published it, could they have a single page that shows some ideas they've developed? I wouldn't do that necessarily. I tend to have meetings that are either held in confidence, which means we've signed a confidentiality agreement, and I'm not just going around handing out my ideas because, frankly, I value my ideas. I think that's what it comes down to, is that there's, my ideas are secretive and my prototypes are wrapped in a lot of bubble wrap because my ideas have value. And I think that's something that maybe new inventors aren't as great about, is that they're so willing to share their idea, not realizing that they have value, and I don't want to say can be stolen, but that you respect them. So you know, to just be handing out your ideas on a flyer, it, to me, says that you don't understand how much value that idea may have. Instead, I would probably talk about like what kind of ideas I do. You know, oh, I really love doing family games that are about 20 minutes. I don't know, something like that. Instead of talking about the specific games, or you could like, I don't know, talk about a specific, saying that, you know, I have this idea that I think would be really great for your line because I know that you do stuff that's 20 minutes in the card game arena or something, I don't know, something like that. But be more vague about it, but kind of get them intrigued. That would be my 2 cents. All right. What types of, or what are one of my favorite components to use in prototypes? You know, honestly, it's anything that I can use that's cheap. I use a lot of cardboard. And I take parts from other things, and I think it goes back to how can you make a prototype and express an idea without spending a ton of money on it. So for example, if I needed like a hard plastic thing, if I could do a video and use something that I found at the store or a cardboard flat or something else so that I didn't have to go and mold and sculpt and or 3D print or vacuum form that particular piece of plastic, then I will do that. Whatever the cheapest way is to get that idea across is, in my opinion, one of the better ways to do it, because you don't want to spend that much time and effort and money on something that is maybe most likely never going to see the light of day. So that's my thought on it. At the same time, there have been prototypes that I've sculpted little tiny pieces for because I thought it was a necessity, and sometimes that gamble really pays off. So it's really take a step back and say, like, how many people can I show this item to? And if you're showing it to like one person and you think there's only one company that's going to take a look at it, maybe spend the least amount of time possible. If you can show it to maybe 20 companies, then you want to know what? Maybe it's worth it to spend more time because you have so many opportunities with it. Yes, so the non-disclosure agreement, I pretty much get anyone to sign it that will sign it. Some companies will not sign it, and that's just the way it is. And then you have to decide whether or not you're going to show them stuff. Other companies have their own. Some will sign mine, some will sign, I'll sign theirs. But it's always worth an ask. And frankly, you know, when I do, it's like, I'm not going to talk about your secrets. You don't talk about my secrets, and we'll just try to be friends and like be, you know, be nice about it. There's a little bit of trust then, hopefully, between you. Because when you're in a conversation, a true conversation, I'm not just pitching, but I want feedback as well. I want them to say why my idea might not be for them. And sometimes that requires them saying things like, oh, we've looked at that before, or, you know, we haven't had a great deal of success with that, or we have something coming in the pipeline that's maybe a bit too similar. But those are all things that they might consider confidential information. And so they want to be covered just as much as I want to be covered. So really, if it's possible to do a mutual non-disclosure, that would be great. Let me see. Have I ever designed a game that was inspired by a component? Yes, in a way, I have. My game Raccoon Rumpus, which I do not have a copy of offhand, but it is by Educational Insights. It is super cute. And I had these little tiny weird shaped plastic cups that I made into faces, and then they have cards that go over them, and you dress these little characters. And I entirely came up with the game because I had these components, and I was like, what can I make out of them? Am I putting something under them? What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And I was like, you know, they look like they could be faces, and then the whole thing just sort of fell in place from there. And so hopefully that's kind of the question that you're answering. That yes, that component came into play, and it ended up being a great game. Now, they changed the shape of that. Raccoon Rumpus was originally a chipmunk, you know, and their artwork is way better than my artwork was, so there you go. And of course, like for that, you know, companies like that, I know that they're going to hire an illustrator, and they chose a really great children's illustrator, because in children's games, like, the illustration is such a big deal. You know, kids love books with great illustrators, and they're going to be engaged by like beautiful artwork. And the plus for us inventors is that we don't actually have to get all the way to that artwork stage when we're pitching something, you know. They can envision where that's going to go. And so for us, it's really getting the idea across of what makes it cute and what makes it different and what makes it something that parents are going to enjoy playing with their kids, and it's not going to be super painful and long like some classics, say maybe Candyland. Actually, I do like Candy, and like Candyland's got, you know, candy and it's cute. Shoots and ladders. The minute that kid goes down the long ladder, it's like that game is taking twice as long now. So, all right, next question. Ooh, two more. All right. Kathleen asks, do I consider myself a toy designer or a game designer? Is it a meaningful difference? Yes and no. I am a game designer because I pretty much exclusively work on games. That is not to say that I don't work on toys. However, I am a mass and specialty market game designer. I'm not a hobby market game designer, which does sort of create a difference because I go to different shows and I meet with different companies, and some of the games that I come up with you might consider more toys with rules. So yeah, but in general, I just call myself an inventor because it covers a lot more stuff. let's see, next, do I mostly design within the same genre? Yo, I will do anything that my mass and specialty clients do, for the most part. I don't do games that take over 20 minutes, but I'll do children's games and family games and adult party games, and so pretty much anything within that realm is really where my sweet spot is. Sometimes I tend to do like a ton of little kids co-op games at one time, and then maybe I'm on a tear of like adult party games. It kind of ebbs and flows with what my clients need and want, because I like making money and licensing things, so that helps. Maxine, I mentioned free pick. What are other free or use sources do I use that I can recommend? There are a couple different like music things that I use for videos. I'm trying to think what they are. I have links to bookmarks to most of them. Not off the top of my head. I would have to think about that one. A lot of the stuff, yeah, like Free Pick's the big one I've been using recently, but there's a couple more like that, and I can't remember the names of it. There's one that does only like background pictures, which is also helpful for videos sometimes. But yeah, I look around the internet for stuff like that, and I am willing to pay for things at times. Again, if I perceive that there is like the extra value that I'm going to put into it, otherwise I will do it myself for drawings. And I've even used GarageBand to write my own music for videos, if that makes sense. Circling back to someone who's trying to break into the industry as a designer, while my advice has been great, it seems to build on already having done something within a company or being involved in a project. Assuming they've played a bunch of games, what is a good first step? I'll be honest, I'm probably not the greatest person to answer this question because, as I said in the beginning, I started at a toy and game invention firm, which gave me a foot in the door from like day one. My very first game on the market was a Hasbro game. So when I approached companies, I said, hey, I've had a game with Hasbro. How can I work with you? And that's worked and built my career from that. Also, like I said, I knew a lot of these people from this toy and game invention firm. So I have no doubt that it is very, very hard to break into this industry without having some of those doors open for you. I went and had the biggest doors open, the Mattels and the Hasbros and the Spin Masters first, and then I worked my way down, and most people are starting at the bottom and working their way up or around, whatever that is. So my advice to anyone that wants to do that is I always say go to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, or the part of the Chicago Toy and Game Fair is the the toy and game track that they have, and it's great because it is a series of lectures. At the same time, you get to meet tons of people, and you get to have these one-on-one meetings with a lot of people you've probably never met before, but frankly, you get to swap business cards and you follow up with them afterwards, and the door has been opened for you. And that is the hardest part about this industry, is getting someone to open up the door for you. And I will admit, I've been in this industry for close to 20 years, and there are still doors that I cannot open no matter how hard I try. And most of them are overseas, so there's a bit of a language barrier, but we'll get to that another time. What do I do when I'm stuck? You want to know what? I leave my desk and I leave my office, and my favorite thing is to take a 20-minute nap. Always. You leave a pad of paper and a pen right next to it, and for some reason, like those first 5 minutes when you're falling asleep, wackiest solutions come up. That's my favorite. Otherwise, I go for a walk or take a shower, because frankly, you just need your mind focused half on something else, and I think the solution will come. At the same time, I will also reach a point where I say, this is not working, and I can spend my time on something else. And it kind of goes into a special area of my office, which is like the area where things like stew for a while. And I'll get back to it eventually, and maybe it is just never meant to be, but maybe it just needs more thinking time, and it just sort of mulls in the back of your brain. Do I have any games? Oh, do I have any types of games that I haven't made yet that I'm wanting to make? Not really. There are so many games out there that I admire that other people have done that are just, I can recognize are not necessarily in my wheelhouse. Kind of recognizing what I'm good at and what I am not good at. And, you know, there are some like really great light strategy games out there and, you know, kind of gateway games that I love to play, but I'm just never going to be good at making that. And I understand that that is my limitation, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to let someone else who's really awesome do it so I can play them. The difference between working with big publishers versus small, medium publishers, money is the answer. It's also harder in a way sometimes. Because there's so many people vying for the spots for big publishers. They, you know, there's a lot more people aiming for them. Smaller publishers, there's still a lot of people aiming for them, and they might not release very many products. So, you know, maybe they're only doing 1 or 2 a year. At the same time, you know, some of those smaller publishers, you just won't see a really great return for a couple years, you know, or even then it's like the accumulation of the money from the product. Over time. So you say like, oh, you know, in like 6-10 years, it'll make it worth it. Whereas like if you're working with a big Hasbro or Mattel or whatever, like that is worth it right away. That first paycheck, hopefully. The difference also is that you may not have, there's like a different type of relationship. At the bigger publishers, you're going to have someone at the front who's a gatekeeper, and there are lots of people behind them. Whereas a small, medium publisher, you're going to end up maybe talking to the person and pitching to the person who is a big part of the final decision. And so you can have a real good conversation with the person who's going to be the one who gives it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Whereas if you're doing it from another company, it's like this gatekeeper then has to translate your thoughts and everything you said in your pitch to the next person, who may have to pitch it to another person, who, you know, it's very hands-off, and you have to trust that your product speaks for itself. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Peggy. Inventor Conference's new inventor track is amazing, and that's at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. So just, I believe, shytag.com, I think, or look it up on Facebook, better yet. They're coming up soon, November, Chicago. It's always the weekend right before Thanksgiving, and there's a couple days of conferences, and then the fairs over the weekend. Go to the conferences, meet people. I'm always there. We'll say hi. But yeah, it's a great way to meet people. And you want to know what, honestly, it's one of my favorite times of year too, because everybody's there and they're like ready to like party before the holidays start. And then, you know, after that, it just turns into basically fair season. So everyone has to go to like Hong Kong and Nuremberg and New York and London. And it's like a good way to see all your friends before the holidays. So, let's see, other than New York Toy Fair, which conventions do I attend? I attend ShyTech and New York Toy Fair, and that is pretty much it. The rest of the time I am meeting outside of fairs and conventions with my clients. I've gone to like Gen Con and other places, but usually I'm going for fun and not necessarily to pitch. I will go and say hi to my clients if I'm there. But yeah, those two are the best for me. And then, you know, because I have good relationships with a lot of these folks, I can just say, hey, I've got like 3 or 4 ideas. Can we schedule a call? And we'll do something like that. Also, you have to keep in mind that not everyone is looking the entire year. There are some companies that only look in small portions of the year. So you have to keep in mind that you can't just be like, I've got an idea for you now. And I always find that it's polite to ask and be like, is this a good time? Because they could say like, no, frankly, your idea is going to get lost in the chaos of us getting prepared for whatever it is, Dallas Fall Toy Preview, or whatever it is that they're looking for. Just like, oh, this is a really bad time for this reason. Other times they'll be like, you want to know what? You know, like, pitch me at this time, or this is a great time. Come on, show me something now. And so it's important to keep that in mind. Like, most people are looking during ShyTag. That's a great time. Most people are looking New York Toy Fair, although that's like the tail end of when they're looking. They've seen a ton of stuff. So I kind of schedule my world like that at the beginning of when everybody's looking, and then at the end when everyone's looking, and I do new stuff in between. And then the rest of the year is like specific to particular clients. That is way too much information. As mass game marketer, do I see let's see, do I see more recognition for designers on the horizon on boxes? God, I hope so, but no. It would be lovely. I know that there's a nice push for it. You know, it's frustrating. It is honestly frustrating, and I don't want to just see more game inventors' names on the box. I want to see more female game inventors' names on the box, because there have been times that I've seen companies do game inventors' names on the box, and for some reason it doesn't seem to be the women, and that makes me super angry. But I don't think that the mass market game folks see the value in it like, say, some of the German companies do. And that's sad and frustrating, but that is also life. And, you know, and honestly, you can fight for it in a contract. You can always ask. That's never, you can ask for anything you want in a contract. Whether or not they'll give it to you and think you're nuts, two different things. So I don't know that I ever make that a top priority in my contract. There are other things that I make more of a point of, depending on the publisher, but it never hurts to ask. So Kathleen, I will keep that in mind. When someone is negotiating their first contract with a mass marketer, what advice would I give them? Hire a toy and game lawyer. Not a patent lawyer, not an intellectual property specialist lawyer, anything like that. It has to be someone who has experience in the toy and game industry, especially the mass side of the toy and game industry. I've actually been on the opposite side of things, where I had a really great lawyer, and the company that I was working for had hired a lawyer who had no idea anything about the toy and game industry, and I got a really great deal out of that one. But for the most part, you really need someone who knows what is going on in the industry to help you avoid those pitfalls. And the more contracts you read, the more you will learn. And eventually you'll kind of get to that point where you have multiple items with a company, and you can pretty much do it without a lawyer, and you only bring a lawyer in when you need to because they're expensive. But having someone who knows what they're doing will save you so much time and money and headache, because they know, like I said, what those pitfalls are. And then at the same time, you know, you don't know what to ask for, and you don't know what the problems are until you've done it a lot. And there are still times where I reach out to my lawyer and I say, I've never seen this before. Can you please help me? Or I have this particular patent problem. Can you help me? And in those cases, it totally makes sense. But yeah, going on your own for the first couple is really rough, and I do not advise it. How long did it take me to work with my first major intellectual property? Kathleen, can you? I'm glad you're very fun. Can you expand a little bit more on that question, and how long did it take me to work with my first major IP? Requirements for, contract requirements that I feel comfortable discussing. Yes, I think in advance is important, and I'm going to say that publicly now. There are a lot of companies now that are looking to do a no advance for a product, and I think that that is absolutely unfair. If you have spent time and effort and money creating a prototype, and for them to say, hey, no advance and you'll just get paid royalties, puts a lot of the onus on them to make sure that they've marketed it well and done everything. And then the worst thing that could happen is that they license it from you, don't pay you in advance, and then say after a year or two, whenever it is, oh no, we dropped it, and then you've made no money. They need to pay you for the work that's been done so far. So it has to be a non-refundable advance. And it should be a significant amount of money, because I'm expecting that all of you have spent some time and effort to put together the idea in the first place, and that idea, like I said before, has value. That idea has value. And then after that, you came up with the prototype, and you tested it, and you came up with a name for it. Maybe they'll change the name, but you still spent the time thinking about the name. And you probably shipped that prototype to a couple people, and you printed it out, and you cut it out, and you did whatever it is that you needed to do. And every single minute that you spent on it, that is time that you were not compensated for. And if they want it that badly, that they should pay you in advance. That is non-refundable, but it will be recoupable against royalties. So if they do a kick-ass job marketing it, they should make that money back, and that gives them an incentive to do it. So there, I will hop off my soapbox, but make sure you get in advance. Another one is always to think about what your exit strategy is, so they don't sit on it forever and you don't get it back in 5 years when they feel like it after they've sold 2 copies a year. Make sure that there's some sort of minimum that they have to make. Ideally, you get a minimum amount of money every year, but good luck getting that these days. Just say that they have to sell a minimum and come to some sort of agreement with them, whether that's 100 copies a year or they have to sell at least, you know, $1,500. You have to get at least $1,500 in royalties. Those are really low numbers, but, you know, like have them help come up with that for you so that you're not watching a check for 17 cents roll in, you know, 4 times a year and, you know, being depressed about it. Because that's important. Because again, your ideas have value. Maxine?
Yeah.
Because that's important. Because again, your ideas have value. Maxine, it was great talking with you. Let's see. Do I have any specific boot for an advance? Thank you, Nicole. Excellent. Glad you guys all like the advance soapbox there. I do think that's important, though. I think that there are times that there are companies who don't understand the amount of work that we put into it. And it's not like you came up with one idea for them. You probably came up with a ton over your lifetime. So they're not, essentially, in the bigger picture, they're not just paying for that one idea that you had. They're paying for all of the ideas and that you can keep doing this over time. And like I said, you know, if they do a great job of marketing, getting their salespeople behind it, they should make that money back, no problem, and you should both be profiting from it. But saying no advance, just, I don't know, it means to me that you're not respecting your idea, probably aren't respecting your time and effort that much either, but it really allows them to do just about whatever they want with your idea, knowing that they're not going to lose any money. And that, let's just say, like 3 weeks from now, someone else comes up and they're like, oh, we kind of like that idea better. They can go and license that, let yours sit on the shelf for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, until your termination, and you never see a dime. But if they've already invested in your idea and said, we've already paid her, you know, the $5,000 advance, we're going to go and make sure we get that money back. I mean, it gives them a reason to do it. Because it hasn't been unheard of that there have been unscrupulous companies who have knowingly licensed an item and paid in advance for it, knowing they were never going to make it because they needed to keep it off the market because maybe it competed or was competitive with something that they were already working on. And they wouldn't tell the inventor with that. And that's not really a nice thing. It's a terrible thing. But at least then that inventor got that non-refundable advance, and hopefully their termination didn't take that long. Where do I get my inspiration, says Mary Cousin. Otis. Otis is my dog, and my cute puppy did inspire my game Peeing Pup, because when he was a puppy, everyone wanted to hold him, but no one wanted to be peed on by him, which, you know, in itself is kind of like a game. So yes, you never know where ideas are going to come from. 1 versus 100. Yes. I did work on 1 versus 100, and interesting enough, I only wrote the content for that for a couple different platforms. That was, they approached me, asked me to write the content for that, so I can't even really take that much credit. They found me, I agreed to do it. I've written content for quite a few different games. It's kind of one of those things that I do on the side to make money right now. Yeah, that's just work for hire. Not that exciting. It's fun though. I mean, I do enjoy it. It's a nice change of pace. Do I do any code designs? Not really. And it's mostly because I am a terrible introvert and I love to be quietly holed up in my office. If I do a code design, it's probably with my husband or daughter. I don't know. Even that's not really a code design as much. I'm not diminishing their work on it at all. They don't usually come to me with ideas. It's, you know, we'll play test and work on it together, and I like giving them credit because they do help out a lot. So no, don't co-design very often, and it's not because I don't like you gals. It's more just because I'm a hermit. Nicole, thank you for agreeing with me. We have lots of value. And our ideas, they're so valuable. That's why we are here, is because companies want to pay us because we have great ideas. So don't ever let anyone tell you that your idea is not worth much. You know, and I mentioned it before, like when you send your prototype, like beautifully package it. Like, send it in there wrapped in bubble wrap and make it beautiful. And, you know, I know there's lots of different thoughts on whether or not you like make a prototype box to go along with it. I don't. Some people do, but you know, like I always make sure everything's beautifully bubble wrapped and there's, you know, a nice little sheet on top saying what's in the box. And I'm showing my ideas respect, and I want them to show ideas respect in return. And if somebody's ever sent me back a prototype and it was like just chucked in a box with no bubble wrap and just looked like it had been beat to hell, I absolutely speak up for my concept and myself and be like, that's unacceptable. Absolutely, positively unacceptable. We as designers, inventors, are dealing in ideas, and those are the tools of our trade. And yes, I can go and make multiple copies of a prototype, but frankly, that takes time. So I would rather have a prototype come back to me in like nice, beautiful condition. Of course, I don't want it coming back to me knowing it's never been played. That never feels good. But I want someone to know that they took the time to respect it, just as, you know, because it is of value. All right. Yes, Pam, you're very welcome for me doing the Ask Me Anything as an introverted hermit. It's definitely out of my wheelhouse. Have I ever said no to a spec request and why? Absolutely. There is a huge power in the word no. You want to know what? I will say no if I don't think it's a good fit for me. I think that that's the first one. I could, you know, we can always be like, yes, this sounds awesome and amazing, and they asked me. But if I don't think I'm going to do a great job, I don't want to do it. If I think that it is poor timing, I also will explain that, and I'm not going to do it. I'm one person in my company, and I have to use my time as I best see fit. So I have had people come to me right before Toy Fair and be like, hey, can you write all of our content for this game? And I'll say, no, I have Toy Fair coming, and I'm sure you understand and respect that, and usually I have a meeting with them. So even if I don't, I mean, come on. What do you think I'm doing right now? I've had companies approach me and say, can I work the week between Christmas and New Year's because they need a bunch of stuff done, and I've said no to that because I also value my family time. At the same time, I've had people come to me at night, at 6 at night, and be like, hey, can you have this done by tomorrow morning? And if I'm free, I'll say yes, but I charge them a rush fee, and that's not asking too much. I mean, you know, they're asking me to do it at night when I should be at home with my family. If I'm going to spend the time, I should, you know, get a little bit of extra money for it. And then there are times that people send you like lists of types of games that they're looking for. And there are times that I'll say, yes, absolutely, I'd love to work on this. And there are other times that it's just like, I'll take a look, and if an idea pops up, great. But if a good idea doesn't pop up, I'll respond to them and say like, you know, like it just, nothing came to mind. You know, most of the time they're asking other inventors as well. So it's not just me. If they're asking just me, that's a different story. Then I'm usually more upfront about like, no, I may not come up with something. Most of the time, yeah, I'm willing to try something out. Let's see. Pam asked, can I tell you about a project that I'm working on that I'm excited about? No, of course not. No, I mean, obviously everything I do is really secretive for the most part. I am working on, weirdly, an adult social game, which is something I haven't done in a while, so we'll see how that pans out. I have a bunch of ideas floating around on my desk, and this is the time of year that I start prepping a bunch of ideas that I've had from over the summer for the Chicago Toy and Game Fair when I have meetings with clients there. So for me, this is like the start of my soon-to-be busy season, and that always excites me because you never know if, you know, tomorrow is the day that I come up with the next like huge idea. Maybe it won't be. Odds are it won't be, but I really love that possibility that, you know, tomorrow could be the day that I make my millions. Yes, so that was that vague enough for an answer there, Pam. All right, 5 minutes left. Anyone else for the question? Anyone? Ooh, did I answer all of them? I am told I'm a fast talker, so it's distinctly possible that I ran through all of them, you guys. Or I just give vague enough answers that you don't want to hear another vague answer. Anyone else?
It's on there.
Well, if no one can think of another, oh, wait. That's it. Oh, wait, one more. Even if they don't put my name in a box, am I usually allowed to say that I worked on the game? Yes. Yes. There are only a couple companies that I've worked on stuff for that I haven't been able to say that I've worked on it. Before I say something about the game, I normally check it with their like PR group to see what I can say about it if it's something really specific. So like in the past, the Raccoon Rumpus game, I did check with them to make sure that I could mention that when I originally invented it, it was a chipmunk game, not a raccoon game, and they were totally fine with it. They even allowed me to share a picture of it on my blog, thegameaisle.com. So yeah, that hopefully answers that question. Mary Cousin, will I ever retire? No, of course not, because inventors never retire. That's why they're all still in the nursing homes, still pitching games, not giving us youngins an opportunity. No, I'm kidding. Only slightly. No, I mean, is there really a point in our lives that we will ever stop coming up with ideas that we want to see executed? I don't know about the rest of you gals out there, but I am always coming up with ideas, and there's some that I just have to make to get out of my head, and I just enjoy it, even if it's just for me. So no, I don't think I will ever retire. What am I most inspired by? I have no idea. I think less about inspired, more about like, I really enjoy games, and I say this in other places, I really enjoy games where people are having fun even when they're losing. And to me, that is something I always aspire to. I don't know that I'm inspired by it, but whenever I find a game that has that kind of feel to it, I'm always like, that's pretty good. I wish I invented it. But I don't know that that necessarily inspires me. Peggy, I don't know what that ouch was to, but that's pretty funny. All right. No on the retirement thing or the old people thing. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Anyhow, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. This is, like I said, out of my wheelhouse. I am a total introvert, hide behind my computer screen, and that's sort of what I had the opportunity to do tonight. I hope I answered everyone's questions. You can always catch me on Twitter. I'm the Game Aisle on Twitter, and that's where I answer most of my questions. Oh, one more question. All right. What is the one thing I wish I could tell myself 10 or 15 years ago? I think it would be, honestly, not to freak out, because there was a lot of time in there that I went from being at an invention firm to being like, oh my gosh, I have no ideas, because the invention firm owned all of my ideas, and saying that I have to start from scratch and that I have to come up with new ideas, and it takes time. You have to get those ideas out there. They have to get into the pipeline. They have to finally be tested and then licensed and then manufactured, like shown at Toy Fair and then manufactured and then hit the shelves, and then your royalty comes. And there's a lot of time in there that you're like, oh my God, how am I going to make any money? And it worked out. I filled it with development work and work for hire work. And honestly, I think during that time, I was just worried that I would never be successful on my own as one singular person. And you want to know it, you can do it. You don't have to pitch everyone and show everyone and do everything. Pick what you enjoy working on. Pick what you feel passionate and that you know is your strength, and work in that area, and maybe dabble elsewhere when you feel like having some fun. And then, like I've said before, respect your work, respect your time, and enjoy it. We work in the best industry, and there's nothing better in the world than when you enjoy your job. So that's that. Alrighty, retirement. All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies. It's been fun. And like I said, you can reach out to me, the Game Aisle, that's AISLE, like an aisle in the store, on Twitter, and I will answer any more questions that you have there. Have a good night, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.